Commander Vextar stared at the holographic display floating above his command chair. The human outpost looked perfect for what he needed. Small, isolated, and apparently defenseless. His yellow eyes gleamed with satisfaction as he studied the intelligence reports one more time. Station Echo 7, his tactical officer announced in their clicking language. 30 human life signs detected. Basic energy shields. Outdated weapon systems. No heavy defenses. Visible. Vextar's mandibles clicked together in what passed for a smile among his people. The Zephyrian raiding fleet had been searching for an easy target for weeks. His crew needed to prove themselves worthy of joining the main hegemony forces. And this remote human research station would be perfect practice. The station sat alone in the darkness of space, orbiting a dead moon in the outer territories. It looked exactly like the intelligence briefings had described. A typical human outpost, filled with valuable research equipment and staffed by soft scientists who had probably never seen real combat. 200 warriors ready for deployment, Commander, reported his boarding commander, a scarred veteran named Thekral. We have enough firepower to take 10 stations like this one. Good, Vextar replied, his voice carrying the confidence of someone who had raided dozens of human settlements. The humans always panic when they see our ships. This should be over quickly. The Zephyrian fleet consisted of 3 sleek warships, each one capable of destroying the small outpost with a single bombardment. But that would defeat the purpose. They needed the equipment intact and the humans alive for questioning. A boarding action would provide excellent training for his green troops while securing valuable technology. Begin approach, Vextar ordered. Standard raid formation. Launch boarding shuttles on my command. As the alien ships moved closer, sensors aboard Station Echo 7 detected their approach. Vextar watched with amusement as the human station seemed to notice them, but showed no signs of alarm. No distress signals appeared on his communication screens. The humans weren't even trying to flee. Typical human stupidity, Thekral commented, checking his weapon systems. They probably don't realize what's happening until it's too late. The station's defensive systems were laughably weak by Zephyrian standards. A few outdated plasma cannons mounted on rotating turrets. Energy shields that couldn't stop a determined assault. Patrol craft that looked more suitable for cargo transport than combat. Sir, the humans appear to be conducting routine operations, the sensor officer reported. No increase in energy signatures, no weapons charging. Vextar nodded approvingly. Intelligence had been correct about human military incompetence. Their species was known throughout the galaxy for poor tactical awareness and slow reaction times. They built their settlements in obvious locations, followed predictable patterns, and relied on outdated technology. Launch boarding parties, he commanded. Thekral, take the primary assault force and secure the station's control center. Secondary teams will capture the research levels and detention areas. Remember, we need the humans alive and the equipment undamaged. The first wave of boarding shuttles departed from the Zephyrian ships like angry insects. Each craft carried 20 elite warriors, equipped with the latest hegemony weapons and armor. They approached the station's docking bays with practiced precision, expecting to encounter minimal resistance. On the station's bridge, a human officer noticed the incoming shuttles and calmly pressed a button on her control panel. Attention all personnel, she announced over the internal communication system. We have incoming visitors. All departments, please prepare for standard protocols. Her voice carried no urgency, no fear. She might have been announcing a routine supply delivery instead of an alien raid. Other humans on the bridge continued their work with the same casual attitude, occasionally glancing at the approaching enemy craft with what looked more like mild interest than terror. The first Zephyrian shuttle reached the station's main docking bay without incident. The bay doors were actually open, as if the humans were expecting visitors. Thekral's team poured out of their craft and immediately took defensive positions, weapons ready for fierce resistance. Instead, they found 3 human maintenance workers who looked up from their equipment with surprise rather than fear. One of them, a young woman with grease-stained coveralls, actually waved at the heavily armed aliens. "You're early," she said in accented standard. "We weren't expecting you until tomorrow." Thekral stared at her through his helmet's display. The human seemed completely unconcerned by the presence of 24 alien warriors. Her companions continued working on some kind of machinery, occasionally glancing over but showing no signs of panic. "Surrender immediately," Thekral growled in his best intimidating voice. "Resist, and you will be harmed." The maintenance workers exchanged glances and shrugged. They set down their tools and raised their hands without argument, but their body language suggested boredom rather than terror. One of them even checked his wrist chronometer and nodded to himself. "Secondary team reporting successful breach," came a voice over Thekral's communication system. "Humans offering minimal resistance." They seemed confused but not frightened. Similar reports came in from other boarding teams throughout the station. The human defenders appeared to be retreating in an organized fashion, but they moved more like people following a planned route than fleeing in panic. They abandoned equipment and fell back toward the station's central sections, but their withdrawal seemed almost rehearsed. Vextar monitored the reports from his command ship with growing confidence. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned. The humans were responding with their typical lack of military competence, and his forces were securing the station section by section. "Resistance is minimal, Commander," Thekral reported. "We should have full control within the hour." "Excellent," Vextar replied. "Begin securing the research data. I want everything downloaded and ready for transport." But as his forces moved deeper into the station, small details began to bother him. The corridors were wider than necessary for a research facility. The walls showed unusual reinforcement patterns. The research equipment his teams were finding looked more like training simulators and exercise machines than scientific instruments. Most unsettling of all, the captured humans kept checking their chronometers and exchanging meaningful looks. They acted more like people waiting for something to happen than prisoners fearing for their lives. One captured human, a middle-aged man with sergeant's stripes on his uniform, actually smiled when he saw Thekral approaching. "Right on schedule," he said quietly to his companion. "Phase 1, complete." The Zephyrian boarding parties moved through Station Echo 7 like a flood of armored death. Thekral's primary assault team had secured the main docking bay and was pushing toward the central hub. His warriors moved with practiced efficiency, clearing rooms and corridors with textbook precision. But something felt wrong. Veteran raider Kesra had participated in over 30 successful raids during her career. She knew how humans typically responded to sudden attack. They should be screaming, running in random directions, or cowering behind furniture. Instead, these humans seemed almost calm. Her squad had cornered 3 humans in a maintenance bay near the station's power core. They wore simple work uniforms and carried no weapons. But they didn't act like terrified civilians. When Kesra's team burst through the door with weapons raised, the humans simply raised their hands and stepped away from their equipment. "Please don't hurt us," said one of them, a young man with dark hair. But his voice carried no real fear. His eyes showed something else entirely: amusement. "You are prisoners of the Zephyrian hegemony," Kesra announced in standard. "Cooperate, and you will not be harmed." The humans nodded obediently, but they kept glancing at each other with small smiles. One woman checked her wrist chronometer and whispered something that sounded like 15 minutes early. "What did you say?" Kesra demanded, pointing her plasma rifle at the woman. "Nothing important," the woman replied. Meanwhile, on his command ship, Vextar was studying the station's layout with growing confusion. The initial assault had gone perfectly. Too perfectly. His forces controlled over 60% of the facility with minimal casualties. The human defenders had retreated in good order, but they hadn't called for help or tried to destroy sensitive equipment. "Commander," his communications officer called out. "The humans aren't transmitting distress signals." "What do you mean?" Vextar turned from his display. "They're sending routine status reports. Normal operational updates. Nothing about being under attack." Vextar's yellow eyes narrowed. "Show me their transmissions." The communications officer activated a holographic display showing intercepted human messages. Instead of desperate pleas for assistance, the station was broadcasting routine maintenance schedules, personnel rotations, and equipment status reports. "Station Echo 7 to Central Command," came a calm female voice. "Daily operational report. All systems functioning normally. Exercise parameters proceeding as scheduled." "Exercise parameters?" Vextar demanded. "What does that mean?" Before anyone could answer, Thekral's voice crackled over the communication system. "Commander, we've reached the station's command center. The humans have sealed themselves inside, but we're preparing to breach." "Any resistance?" Vextar asked. "Minimal. They seem to be following some kind of withdrawal plan. Very organized for panicked scientists." Vextar studied the station schematics more carefully. The facility was larger than initial reports had indicated. The corridors were built to military specifications, not civilian standards. The power distribution system could support much heavier equipment than simple research computers. "Sir," his sensor officer called out urgently, "I'm detecting anomalous readings from several sections of the station." "What kind of anomalies?" "The equipment we thought was research apparatus. It appears to be military simulation gear, training equipment, combat preparation systems." A cold feeling began to grow in Vextar's stomach. "Are you saying this isn't a research station?" "Unknown, sir. But these readings suggest significant military capabilities that weren't in our intelligence reports." On the station itself, Kesra's prisoner squad was growing increasingly nervous. The captured humans remained cooperative, but their behavior was all wrong. They acted like people watching an entertaining show, rather than victims of an alien raid. "Phase 2 should start soon," one of the prisoners whispered to another. "What's Phase 2? Kesra demanded, stepping closer with her weapon ready. The human looked up at her with genuine surprise. He glanced at his companions, who were trying not to laugh. "We're not supposed to tell you. It would ruin the exercise." "What exercise?" Kesra's voice carried a dangerous edge. "The training exercise," the human replied matter-of-factly. "You're right on schedule, by the way. The instructors said most alien raiders take about this long to secure the outer sections." Kesra felt ice forming in her veins. "What are you talking about?" Before the human could answer, the station's internal lighting shifted from normal white to combat red. Emergency klaxons began sounding throughout the facility, and blast doors started sealing automatically. "Attention all personnel," came a calm female voice over the internal communication system. "Exercise. Phase 2 is now in effect. All trainee units report to designated positions. Instructors, please begin advanced tactical scenarios." Thekral's voice exploded over the communication channel. "Commander! The blast doors are sealing. We're being separated into isolated sections." "All teams report in," Vextar ordered, his calm beginning to crack. Reports flooded in from throughout the station. Zephyrian teams were finding themselves trapped in sealed compartments as the station's security systems activated. The humans they had captured seemed unsurprised by these developments. "Squad 7 reporting," came one panicked voice. "The humans in our section aren't acting like prisoners anymore. They're regrouping." Quote, "Squad 12 here," added another voice. "Sir, these aren't scientists. They're carrying weapons now. Military-grade equipment." Vextar stared at his tactical display in growing horror. The red dots representing his boarding parties were being surrounded by blue dots. Human defenders who had appeared, seemingly from nowhere. "This isn't possible," he muttered. "Our intelligence showed only 30 humans on the station." His sensor officer looked up from her console with wide eyes. Commander, I'm detecting over 200 human life signs. They were somehow hidden from our initial scans. The captured human in Kesra's section smiled broadly. Station Echo 7 isn't a research facility, he explained with the patience of a teacher addressing slow students. It's Earth's Advanced Combat Training Center. You just walked into the middle of our final examination. The pieces clicked into place with terrible clarity. The too-perfect approach. The minimal resistance. The calm responses. The organized retreat. None of it had been real. We've been expecting you for 3 days, the human continued cheerfully. Our instructors wanted to see how current alien boarding tactics work against prepared human defenders. Thanks for volunteering to be our test subjects. Kesra raised her weapon, but the human held up a hand. I wouldn't do that if I were you. The real defenders are about to arrive, and they get grumpy when prisoners misbehave. As if summoned by his words, explosions echoed through the station's corridors. The sound of weapons fire began to fill the air. But it wasn't the chaotic noise of desperate defense. It was the controlled, methodical sound of professionals doing their job. What have we walked into? Kesra whispered. The human smile grew wider. The best military training in the galaxy. And you just became part of the curriculum. The station's transformation began with the lighting. Red emergency illumination bathed every corridor in bloody shadows, as blast doors sealed with mechanical precision. What had seemed like a simple human outpost revealed itself as something far more dangerous. Colonel Sarah Chen's voice echoed through the communication system with the calm authority of someone completely in control. All training personnel, this is Control. Exercise, Phase 2 is now active. Trainee units Alpha through Delta, observe and record. Instructor teams. You are cleared for live fire demonstration. Sergeant Minjun Park, one of the captured maintenance workers, checked his chronometer and grinned at his Zephyrian captors. Right on time. You guys are really good at following predicted patterns. Kesra stared at him through her helmet visor. Predicted patterns? Oh yeah, Park replied casually. Our tactical computers have been modeling Zephyrian raid behavior for months. You hit every single checkpoint exactly when the simulations said you would. The sound of weapons fire grew louder in the corridors outside their sealed section. But it wasn't the panicked shooting of desperate defenders. The controlled bursts and coordinated movements spoke of military professionals executing a well-rehearsed plan. Squad 3. This is Squad Leader Torres. Came a new voice over an open channel. Zephyrian team, located in Section C7. Beginning. Containment protocols. Copy that, Torres, replied another voice. Recording their tactical responses for training analysis. Trainees. Note how they're bunching up in the corridor. Classic mistake when facing human defenders. Kesra felt her stomach drop. They weren't fighting for their lives. They were being studied like laboratory specimens. On his command ship, Vextar watched his tactical display with growing horror. His boarding teams were being systematically isolated and surrounded. Each squad found itself trapped in a different section of the station, facing defenders who seemed to know exactly where they were and what they would do next. Commander. Thekral's voice crackled with static and fear. These aren't scientists. They're soldiers. Professional soldiers. All teams report status immediately, Vextar ordered. The reports that came back painted a nightmare picture. Squad after squad was being engaged by human defenders who moved through the station like they owned it. They knew every passage, every hiding spot, every tactical advantage. Squad 7 pinned down in engineering, came one report. The humans appeared to have been waiting for us. They had prepared positions. Squad 12, requesting immediate extraction, added another voice. We're facing coordinated resistance from multiple directions. These aren't untrained civilians. Squad 15. Squad 15 is down, whispered a third voice. The humans took them alive. They're being processed for what did they call it? Tactical intelligence gathering. Well, Vextar's communications officer looked up from her console with wide, frightened eyes. Sir, I'm monitoring human internal communications. They're treating this as a training exercise. Our people are being used as live training aids. That's impossible, Vextar snarled. But even as he said it, he knew it was true. In Section C7, Captain Jessica Torres led her team with the calm efficiency of someone who had done this many times before. The Zephyrians had taken predictable positions behind overturned tables and equipment crates. They were following standard alien boarding tactics exactly as the training manuals described. Trainee observation post-alpha. She spoke into her communication device, while gesturing for her team to take flanking positions. Note how the aliens are using three-point defensive formation. This is textbook hegemony small unit tactics. Watch how we counter it. She signaled to her squad. They moved like ghosts, through access panels and maintenance tunnels that the Zephyrians didn't even know existed. Within minutes, they had the alien squad surrounded from 4 different directions. Attention Zephyrian forces, Torres announced in perfect standard. You are surrounded by superior tactical position. Surrender your weapons, and you will be treated according to galactic military conventions. The Zephyrian squad leader, a veteran named Rexnal, raised his plasma rifle defiantly. Zephyrian warriors do not surrender to inferior species. Noted for the record. Torres replied with professional interest. Trainees. Observe cultural pride overriding tactical common sense. This is typical of hegemony forces when cornered. Rexnal fired his weapon, sending a bolt of superheated plasma toward Torres's position. She had already moved, rolling behind cover with practiced ease. Her return fire was precise and controlled. Designed to disable, rather than kill. Standard Zephyrian plasma weaponry. Torres continued her running commentary, while her team systematically neutralized the alien squad. Note the longer charging time compared to human pulse weapons. Exploit the gap between shots. One by one, Rexnal's warriors fell to stun rounds and non-lethal restraint systems. The humans moved with surgical precision, capturing each alien alive while documenting their equipment and tactics. Excellent demonstration, Captain Torres, came Colonel Chen's voice over the communication system. All trainee units, please review the tactical footage for tomorrow's analysis session. Back in the maintenance bay, Park was explaining the situation to Kesra with the enthusiasm of someone proud of his workplace. Station Echo 7 is where we train the people who train our military. Every scenario you can imagine. Boarding actions, siege warfare, hostile negotiations, evacuation procedures. We practice it all here. We NT. We N70. We NT. But your intelligence reports, Kesra protested weakly. They said this was a research station. Oh, we do research, Park agreed cheerfully. We research the best ways to fight aliens who think humans are weak. The blast doors to their section suddenly opened with a soft hiss. Instead of Zephyrian reinforcements, human soldiers in full combat armor entered with weapons ready. They moved with the fluid coordination of an elite unit. Sergeant Park, the lead soldier said, please step away from the prisoners. We'll take over from here. Park saluted casually and moved to safety. They were very cooperative, Lieutenant Kim. Answered lots of questions about Zephyrian tactics. Lieutenant Kim nodded and turned to the captured aliens. I am Lieutenant Sarah Kim, Earth Special Operations Command. You are now prisoners of war under Article 12 of the Galactic Military Code. Do you understand your rights? Kesra stared at the human officer. Special Operations Command. The elite of the elite. She had heard stories about Earth's special forces. Whispered tales of human soldiers who could appear anywhere, fight anyone, and disappear like shadows. You're not supposed to exist, she whispered. Kim raised an eyebrow. I'm sorry? Human Special Forces. Galactic intelligence said they were myths. Stories to scare young warriors. Well, Kim replied with a slight smile, I guess your intelligence was wrong about a lot of things today. Throughout the station, similar scenes were playing out as Earth's finest soldiers systematically captured or neutralized every Zephyrian boarding team. What had started as a routine raid had become the most expensive military lesson the hegemony had ever received. And in the command center, Colonel Chen was just getting started with the real demonstration. The station's main command center had been sealed since the beginning of the raid. Thekral and his assault team had spent 40 minutes trying to breach the reinforced doors, using every cutting tool and explosive charge they carried. Nothing worked. The door is military-grade composite, his technical specialist reported. It would take a ship's main cannon to break through. Keep trying, Thekral ordered, though doubt was creeping into his voice. The sounds of combat throughout the station had changed. His teams weren't advancing anymore. They were being captured one by one. Suddenly, the massive blast doors began to open with a soft hydraulic whisper. Finally, Thekral muttered, raising his plasma rifle. Prepare for assault. But instead of fleeing scientists, or even armed defenders, a single human woman stepped through the doorway. She wore a simple military uniform with colonel's insignia and carried no visible weapons. Her gray hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and she looked more like a university professor than a military officer. Good afternoon, Colonel, Sarah Chen said politely in perfect standard. I'm sorry to keep you waiting. We were running a few minutes behind schedule. Thekral stared at her in confusion. You're surrendering? Oh no, Chen replied with a gentle smile. I'm here to provide commentary for our advanced training session. Please, come inside. The real demonstration is about to begin. Against every tactical instinct he possessed, Thekral found himself following the colonel into the command center. The room beyond was not what he expected. Instead of a simple control room, he found himself in a sophisticated military command center with holographic displays showing every section of the station. As you can see, Chen continued, gesturing to the displays, your boarding action proceeded exactly as our tactical computers predicted. 94% accuracy in our behavioral modeling. The holographic displays showed real-time footage from throughout the station. Thekral watched in horror as his teams were systematically outmaneuvered and captured by human defenders who seemed to know their every move in advance. Trainee Unit Alpha, Chen spoke into her communication headset. Please note how the Zephyrian commander is reacting to unexpected information. Classic cognitive dissonance. We'll analyze this footage in tomorrow's psychology seminar. You're studying us, Thekral realized. Of course, Chen replied matter-of-factly. How else would we learn to fight your people effectively? Your species has been raiding human settlements for 3 years. We decided it was time to understand your tactics. A new voice crackled over the communication system. Control, this is Captain Torres. All Zephyrian ground teams have been neutralized. Moving to Phase 3. Acknowledged, Captain. Trainees, please observe as our Special Operations Units demonstrate advanced alien vessel interdiction techniques. Chen touched a control on her console, and the main display shifted to show the space around the station. Thekral's heart nearly stopped. The Zephyrian fleet was surrounded. What had appeared to be empty space now revealed itself as a carefully laid trap. Hidden defensive platforms emerged from concealment. Their weapons trained on the 3 alien warships. Small human fighters appeared from behind asteroids and debris fields. The defenseless station suddenly bristled with weapon emplacements that had been concealed beneath false panels. Your ships are equipped with standard hegemony stealth technology, Chen explained like a teacher giving a lecture. Unfortunately for you, we've been studying captured hegemony vessels for 2 years. Our sensors are specifically calibrated to detect your cloaking systems. 8. On his command ship, Vextar stared at his tactical display in disbelief. Dozens of human ships and defensive platforms had appeared from nowhere. His 3 warships were hopelessly outgunned and surrounded. Incoming transmission from the human station. His communications officer reported in a shaking voice. Put it through, Vextar ordered, though he already knew what he would hear. Colonel Chen's calm face appeared on his main screen. Commander Vextar, I presume? This is Colonel Sarah Chen, commanding officer of Earth Special Operations Training Facility Echo 7. Your fleet is completely surrounded, and your boarding parties have been captured. I'm prepared to discuss terms for your surrender. Terms? Vextar sputtered. We came here to raid a research station. You came here to attack a military training facility during an active exercise, Chen corrected politely. A rather serious violation of galactic law, I'm afraid. However, since you've provided such excellent training value for our students, I'm willing to be lenient. Captain Torres appeared beside Chen on the screen. All Zephyrian prisoners are secured and unharmed, she reported. We've documented their equipment, tactics, and vessel specifications for training purposes. Excellent work, Captain. Commander Vextar. I want you to understand what you've walked into. This facility trains the people who train Earth's military. Every human soldier in our space forces has studied here. Every tactical manual, every combat scenario, every strategic doctrine. It all starts here. ABC. 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 Chen gestured to her displays, showing the captured Zephyrian teams. Your raiders provided invaluable live training data. Our students have learned more about hegemony tactics in the past 2 hours than they could from months of simulations. This is impossible, Vextar protested. Human military capabilities are limited. Your species lacks tactical sophistication. That's what we wanted you to think, Chen replied with a knowing smile. Every successful raid your people have conducted was allowed to succeed. We needed to study your methods, learn your weaknesses, and develop countermeasures. Torres stepped forward. Commander, every human settlement in this sector is protected by graduates of this facility. Every defenseless outpost has trained defenders. Every easy target is potentially a trap. The tactical display showed more human ships jumping into the system, modern warships with advanced weapon systems that made the Zephyrian vessels look obsolete. Earth's 47th Fleet, Chen explained. They were conducting exercises in the next system when you arrived. Rather convenient timing, don't you think? Vextar realized with crushing certainty that his entire mission had been anticipated. The intelligence reports, the easy approach, the minimal defenses, all of it, had been carefully orchestrated to lure his forces into a trap. What do you want? He asked finally. Information exchange, Chen replied promptly. Your tactical databases, ship specifications, and hegemony military doctrine. In return, your crews will be returned unharmed with a message for your superiors. And what message is that? Chen's expression became serious. That Earth is not the weak prey species you think we are. We're predators who have been studying our hunters. Any race that wants to test our defenses should consider very carefully whether they can afford the education we'll provide. Torres added, every raid you've conducted has made us stronger. Every attack has taught us something new. You've been training us to fight you without even knowing it. The choice is yours, Commander, Chen concluded. Surrender now and learn something valuable about human military capabilities, or force us to provide a more direct demonstration. Looking at the overwhelming force surrounding his ships, Vextar made the only logical choice available to him. But as he began surrender procedures, he knew this would not be the end of the encounter between the hegemony and humanity. It would be the beginning of a very different relationship, one where humans were no longer seen as prey. 3 hours after the raid began, Station Echo 7's detention facility held 200 Zephyrian prisoners. They sat in clean, comfortable cells designed according to galactic prisoner of war conventions. Medical personnel had treated their injuries. and they were provided with food suitable for their species. Commander Vex's Tar found himself in a private holding room with Captain Jessica Torres, who was conducting what she called a post-action interview. She treated him with professional courtesy, but her questions revealed the depth of human intelligence about hegemony operations. Your approach vector suggests you were using Standard Attack Pattern 7, Torres noted, reviewing data on her tablet. We recorded some interesting variations in your ship formations. Mind explaining the tactical reasoning? Vex-Tar studied the human officer with new respect. She spoke about Zephyrian military doctrine with the confidence of an expert. How do you know our attack patterns? 1. We've been watching your people conduct raids for 3 years, Torres replied matter-of-factly. Every engagement has been recorded and analyzed. We have extensive files on over 40 different hegemony commanders, including yourself. She showed him a holographic display containing detailed information about his service record, his ship specifications, even his personal tactical preferences. The humans had been studying him specifically. Why? Vex, Tar asked. Because knowledge is the foundation of effective defense, Torres explained. We needed to understand how you think, how you fight, what you consider valuable targets. Today's exercise provided the final data we needed. In the main conference room, Colonel Chen was conducting an after-action review with her trainee officers. They sat around a large table, while holographic displays showed footage from every stage of the raid. Lieutenant Morrison, Chen addressed a young human officer. Analysis of the initial contact phase? The Zephyrians followed predicted approach patterns with 94% accuracy. Morrison replied confidently. They targeted our apparent weakest points and assumed our lack of immediate response indicated tactical incompetence. Correct, Captain Rodriguez. Assessment of their boarding procedures? Standard hegemony tactics, ma'am. 3-point formation. Overwhelming force concentration. Assumption of quick victory. They didn't adapt when their assumptions proved incorrect. Chen nodded approvingly. Excellent observations. The key lesson here is that many alien species make the same fundamental error. They underestimate human adaptability and assume our apparent weaknesses are real limitations. She activated a new display showing comparative tactical data. Zephyrian doctrine emphasizes rapid, overwhelming force against unprepared targets. They excel against opponents who panic or react predictably. However, their effectiveness drops dramatically against prepared defenders who understand their methods. One trainee raised his hand. Colonel, how do we know other alien species won't adapt to our countermeasures? An excellent question, Ensign Park. The answer is that we continue evolving our methods. Every encounter teaches us something new, and we share that knowledge throughout Earth's military. Our enemy's greatest weakness is their assumption that humans don't learn from experience. Meanwhile, in another part of the station, Sergeant Minjun Park was giving a guided tour to several Zephyrian prisoners, including Kesra. The tour was both educational and psychological warfare. This is our main training hall, Park explained, as they walked through a massive chamber filled with combat simulators. We can recreate the environment of any known alien vessel or installation. Every human marine trains here before deployment. The Zephyrians stared at hundreds of simulation pods, each one running scenarios based on real alien encounters. They watched human trainees practicing boarding actions against holographic representations of various alien species, including Zephyrians. How many humans train here? Kesra asked quietly. About 5,000 per year pass through this facility, Park replied, plus another 10,000 who receive remote training through our satellite installations, and this is just one of 17 similar facilities throughout human space. 17? Kesra felt ice forming in her stomach. Oh yes, we specialize in different types of training. Echo 7 focuses on boarding actions and close-quarters combat. Echo 3 handles fleet tactics and space warfare. Echo 1-2 trains diplomatic security and cultural specialists, Park spoke with obvious pride in his organization. They stopped before a wall display showing a galactic map marked with human territories. Red dots indicated known alien threats, while blue lines showed shipping routes and strategic positions. Every raid your people have conducted is marked here, Park explained, pointing to dozens of red indicators in human space. We've learned something from each one. Ship designs, weapon capabilities, tactical preferences, cultural blind spots. You've been using us, Kesra realized. We've been learning from you, Park corrected. There's a difference. Every species that attacks human settlements teaches us how to defend against them more effectively. Back in the interview room, Torres was wrapping up her session with Vextar. She had extracted detailed information about hegemony fleet compositions, command structures, and strategic objectives in exchange for insights into human defensive capabilities. One final question, Commander, Torres said, setting down her tablet. What will you tell your superiors about today's encounter? Vextar considered his answer carefully. That human military capabilities have been seriously underestimated, that your species is far more dangerous than our intelligence suggested, and that any race considering attacks on human territory should prepare for consequences they haven't imagined. Torres smiled approvingly. That's exactly the message we want you to carry back. 2 days later, the Zephyrian fleet was released with full ceremonial honors. Their damaged ships had been repaired by human technicians, their injured crew members treated by human doctors, and their equipment returned in better condition than when they arrived. Colonel Chen personally bid farewell to Commander Vextar on the station's main docking bay. I hope your journey home is pleasant and uneventful, she said formally. Colonel, Vextar replied. I must ask, how many other species have received similar educational experiences? Chen's smile was mysterious. 17 different species have attempted raids on human installations in the past 3 years. All of them received comprehensive introductions to Earth's actual military capabilities. And their response? 12 species have established formal diplomatic relations with Earth. 3 have signed mutual defense treaties. 2 have requested military training exchanges. Chen paused meaningfully. Only 1 species has been foolish enough to attempt a second raid. What happened to them? They discovered that our training facilities are actually our least impressive military assets. As the Zephyrian ships departed, Vextar carried with him complete recordings of everything he had experienced. The hegemony leadership would watch humans systematically outmaneuver and capture superior alien forces. They would see human soldiers treating elite hegemony raiders like training exercises. Most importantly, they would understand that humanity's apparent vulnerability was the most sophisticated military deception in galactic history. The message was clear. Earth was not prey waiting to be hunted. They were predators who had been studying their would-be hunters for years, learning their weaknesses and preparing responses to every possible threat. Any race that wanted to test human defenses would receive an education in military science. Whether they survived, the lesson would depend entirely on how quickly they learned to respect their teachers. In the depths of space, other alien fleets monitoring the encounter reached the same conclusion. Humanity was no longer seen as an easy target for expansion or exploitation. They were recognized as what they had always been, the most dangerous species in the galaxy, simply because they never stopped learning how to survive.